All right, thank you, counsel. Ms. Clark, you may proceed.
Sir, I'm going to ask that you write the number down on this pad so that we don't publicize this number, because I think you probably don't want it publicized.
No, you're right.
It'd be great if you start getting 10,000 calls a day on the private line. And the number that you've just written for us, I'm going to show you counsel now. This number is this the number that the Detective Phillips called you on that night?
That's correct.
All right, we'll mark that sheet of paper, People's 61? 61.
Thank you. And how is it that you happen to have Detective Phillips' cell phone number?
He gave it to me out at the scene.
When you were at 875 South Bundy?
Yes.
All right, then you, I think you indicated West Tech said they didn't have a listing, or you had that asked you to get a specific address. Is that right?
They indicated that they didn't show a listing, and he asked me if I could get a number, yes.
Okay, and then you indicated you called Detective Phillips and you got the address.
That's correct.
Then what did you do?
I called West Tech back, got a hold of the same operator, and I gave him the number of 360 Rockingham.
And what did he indicate then?
Well, there was still some...
I think the result of this exchange may be admissible, but all of the talk back and forth, I think it's just plain hearsay.
Sustained.
That's true. Did you attempt to, you gave the address of 360 Rockingham, is that correct?
That's correct.
And after you had given that information, sir, did you call Detective Phillips again?
I called him back because there was some confusion, again, even with the numbers that I gave West Tech, they still, Operator 48 was still having a hard time finding a listing. So I told them that I would call the detectives back, and I did. I got a hold of Detective Phillips, and he said, well, try it again, because there are signs on the property indicating that West Tech has the security contract.
And so did you call back again?
Well, before I had a chance to call back, I got a call from West Tech, and it was Operator 48, and he said, was that North or South Bundy? And I said that was North Bundy.
Excuse me? Bundy?
Rockingham.
Okay.
And I told him it was North, and he said, oh, okay, well, we have a listing for Mr. O.J. Simpson.
Whether he got the phone number or didn't get it, that's all that's relevant.
Correct. Can we just ask non-hearsay questions that will get us a non-hearsay response?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Did you ask whether they had any information as to whether or not the defendant was in or out of town?
Yes, I did on that same telephone call when he told me that he had the listing. Yes.
Okay.
And he indicated that he did not show that Mr. Simpson was out of town.
Did you then call, Detective Phillips back then?
Yes, I called him back.
And did you give him information concerning the defendant?
I told him what I was just told by West Tech, yes.
That the defendant, they had no record that he was out of town?
That's correct.
Now, at that point, when you called Detective Phillips on his cell phone, had he received the defendant's phone number at his home yet?
No.
I mean, the defendant's home phone number.
No, he did not.
And did you get another call from Detective Phillips after that point?
A few minutes later, Detective Phillips called me back and asked me to make another telephone call to West Tech and to find out if they had a key to 360 North Rockingham, and if it could be sent out there with a representative from their company.
Now, did you get more than one call from Detective Phillips within that time frame, within those few minutes, requesting the key?
Yes, I did. I believe I received at least 2 within a real short period of time.
And after you got the second call requesting a key, what did you do?
That's when I called West Tech back, and they told me that
Conversations, can we get to the
Sustained.
result?
I'm not, right.
Sustained.
they told
No,
Hold
no,
on,
no,
hold
no.
on.
Wait.
Sergeant, would you please listen precisely to the question that is asked of you? Answer just that question. Don't volunteer anything, any information that is not requested of you, please. Ms. Clark.
Sergeant Rossi, did you ask West Tech if they had a key for the defendant's home?
yes, I did.
And they responded, and they gave you an answer, is that correct?
Yes,
And based on what they told you, did you call Detective Phillips back again,
yes, I did.
right after you spoke to them?
Yes,
And when you spoke to Detective Phillips a second time, what did you tell him?
I told them that West Tech indicated they did not have a key.
And did you indicate, right, and then did you call back to Detective Phillips again, about 10 minutes later?
Approximately 10 minutes after that phone call, yes, I did.
And again, this is on his cell phone.
Yes, it is.
And why did you call that 10 minutes later again?
I wanted to find out if a representative from the West Tech company had arrived there, because I was told that there was a 2-minute ETA to get somebody out there to our detectives.
Okay, now, so you had asked West Tech for a key,
That's correct.
and did you ask, and based on their response to you, did you ask for something else?
Well, when they told me they didn't have one, I asked them if they could send a representative out there,
And why?
because the detectives they felt they needed to get into the residence, and they may have to force entry if they couldn't get a key. And if that was the case, they wanted someone from West Tech there
For what purpose?
to be there when they made forced entry.
To witness it?
To witness it, yes.
And so after you discovered that they did not have a key, did you call West Tech or have another conversation with West Tech concerning having someone from West Tech go out to the property?
Yes, I did.
And you were given some time estimate as to when someone would arrive?
Yes. Operator 48
Okay.
told me it would be about 2 minutes.
No, no,
Wait. Sergeant,
I'm trying.
listen very carefully to the question. Question was, were you given it some time estimate as to when somebody would arrive? The answer to that question is either yes or no, not what the answer was. Ms. Clark.
And after you got that information, was that when you called Detective Phillips back?
That's correct.
And you were calling for what purpose?
To inform him what West Tech told me.
And then did you also call to find out what had happened, if anyone had arrived?
Yes, I did.
Now, you were at the West LA station, sir?
That's correct.
And was it requested of you by Detective Phillips to make contact with the children, Sydney and Justin?
Yes, he asked me that.
And what were you doing at his request?
Per his request, I went in and checked on the children.
More than once?
No, I just did it once. I had
Wait.
checked.
I'm sorry?
I did it twice actually that evening, but only once to Detective Phillips' request.
And was that to make sure they were all right?
That's correct.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Certainly.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Sergeant Rossi.
Good afternoon, sir.
Could you give us, please, a little bit of your educational background and police training that led you to your present station in the force?
I spent 5 months in Los Angeles Police Academy, and after I graduated from the academy, I entered college and I took a police science major. I've worked several field-related details. The majority of my time on the job has been in uniform and in the field.
How long were you a patrolman before you made sergeant?
10 years, just about.
Is that a normal interval or somewhat faster than the average?
It's relatively normal. I actually worked patrol for the first 4 years. Then I transferred to Metropolitan Division, which is also primarily a uniform detail. And we do similar patrol type of work, but it's throughout the entire city, but it is in uniform.
The rank of sergeant, does that have several grades?
Yes, sir, it has 2 grades.
1 and 2?
That's correct.
And the rank of detective, how many grades does that have in West L.A.?
That has 3.
And downtown?
The same?
And I take it that 3 is the higher rather than the lower
Yes, sir.
grades? On the night in question, Detective Phillips was a 3, Detective Furman was a 2, is that correct?
That's correct.
How do those ranks compare with the insignia that you're wearing in the hierarchy of the police department?
A Detective 3 is a little bit higher than me, and a Detective 2 is a little bit lower than me.
You're in the middle.
That's right.
Now, as part of your training, did you take specialized courses in, for instance, homicide?
In college, I took 2 criminalistic courses, yes.
And have you ever had any specialized courses in crime scene protection?
The same 2 courses covered that.
Has there been any continuing legal education requirement or law enforcement education requirement in the LAPD that you have observed?
No, sir.
Have you ever been to any seminars or schools on crime scene protection since you became a policeman?
Other than college? No, I haven't.
Are you responsible in any way for the training of younger officers who are usually the first to arrive on a crime scene, are they not?
Yes, I
Patrolman?
am. Yes.
Well, objection, that seems back on the counsel is testifying.
Overruled.
Who are usually,
Overruled.
Is it necessary, because patrolmen are apt to be first at the scene, that they have some training in what it is that needs to be protected?
No more than a regular patrol officer.
All right, well, I don't know where you're starting from, so we better define it. Should they be trained to preserve footprints and foot impressions, for instance, and protect them from obliteration?
objection, Your Honor, no foundation.
Overruled.
They're not trained specifically for that. The only thing they're trained for as far as preserving a crime scene is to secure the location.
Well, that's a word that I'd like to define with you, if we can. What do you mean when you say secure the location of a double homicide, Sergeant Rossi?
Disallow anyone other than authorized personnel to enter the location.
What are the risks if people are allowed to wander in and out of the crime scene? The risks to the evidence.
To contaminate, that would contaminate it.
All right. Now, you accepted, as I understand your testimony, the word of Officer Risky that the crime scene, quote, was secure.
That's correct.
You made no inquiry of him as to what precisely he meant by that, or what it was that was secure, did you?
No.
You accepted that blanket assurance as being sufficient
I could
to
see
preserve the integrity of the evidence, did you not?
That's correct. I could see that it was secure.
No. When you were told on the phone, hard on the heels of his arrival, that the crime scene was secure, you couldn't see anything, could you?
No, not then.
No. You had to rely on his word
Yes, sir.
that it was secure,
Yes.
but you didn't inquire as to what he meant by that.
No, I didn't ask him.
And you didn't inquire of the nature of the scene that he was securing, did you?
I didn't ask him.
No. Do you know the difference, for instance, Sergeant, between a footprint and a foot impression?
No, I don't.
Assuming, if you will, that a footprint is a two-dimensional residue of someone having walked somewhere with or without a shoe, and a foot impression is a three-dimensional residue, Would you think those worth preserving for the benefit of the detectives who might be called upon to solve the case?
Yes, sir, I would.
There wasn't any question in your mind that this was a brutal and deliberate double homicide from the minute you heard the description, true?
That's correct.
This was hardly, possibly, an accidental killing.
Yes, sir.
Furthermore, there wasn't any question in your mind, once Officer Risky had swept through the premises, that the killers, whoever they were gone. True?
That's correct.
At large, on the loose, carrying with them, in all probability, some bloody evidence. True?
Objection, killers, plural. Counsel's testifying, so fact, not
Sustained.
evidence.
Fact, not evidence. Rephrase the question. Killer or
Are
killer?
we restricted to the state's theory of one killer, erroneous
No.
though it may be?
No, but the question
Objection,
assumes...
counsel testifying
Hold on.
with-
Hold on. I was speaking with counsel. The question assumes a fact that's not in evidence we don't know. You can
Very well.
phrase it properly as killer or killers.
Fine, I accept that.
Thank you.
Is it fair to say that based on everything you knew, a killer or killers was somewhere away from the property
Yes.
and possibly still a risk to others in the community?
Yes.
All right. Now, when you first heard of this crime and you were told that this was the ex-wife of O.J. Simpson, is that the way she was described to you?
Yes, sir.
All right. Nicole Brown Simpson was known in the Brentwood area, was she not? Known to you?
She really wasn't known to me. No.
I don't mean personally acquainted. I mean, you knew who she was.
Yes.
So that the name is one you would associate with Mr. Simpson.
Yes.
Okay. Is it fair to say as well, Sergeant, that the minute you heard that, you had the notion that this might become a high-pressure case with
Yes,
lots
sir.
of media attention?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, from 55 minutes after midnight when you made your first phone call to 1 o'clock when you called Phillips and right on through to 1:25 when you finished talking with Captain Dial, you discussed the potential of this case with every single superior you had, correct?
Yes, I did.
All right. And it was a matter that you were worried about, true?
Yes, sir.
One of the reasons for that worry, as Officer Risky has said, is that the media might get there before the detectives and wreak havoc with the scene. That's a fair concern, isn't it?
I wasn't real concerned with that.
You weren't concerned about that.
No.
Well, did you learn from Officer Risky when he called that he was on a phone in the home of the victim?
Not when I called. Not when I talked to him on the phone. I didn't know where he called from.
You know anything about the operation of telephones in Los Angeles County, and Brentwood in particular?
Objection, vague.
Sustained.
All right. Are you familiar with a last number redial option that you can get on telephones in this community?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the Star 69 service?
No.
Okay. What does last number redial do if you use that facility on a private phone, for instance?
It means if you press the button, you'll dial the number you had previously called.
Okay. And what happens if you pick up that phone and dial a new number?
I believe it erases or obliterates that number.
Wipes it up.
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you ask Officer Risky whether or not he might be able to take a phone in that home and try last number redial?
I didn't know where he's calling from.
No. Did you ask him whether or not he could go into that home and find a phone with last number redial on it and hit the button?
No, I didn't.
Might it have been useful to detectives to know who the victim last telephoned before her death?
Yes.
Objection, it's in fact not evidence that she had that last number redialed.
It's also speculation. But that's something, if we establish that it was in fact true, that's something that can be argued to the jury. Proceed.
We will establish that it existed.
Proceed.
All right.
Is that,
No, it's sustained. This is a question for some other witness. It's interesting, but it can be argued at a later point.
Fine.
the motion to strike the answer?
It's inconsequential at this point.
Is it fair to say it's something that wasn't discussed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, is it not a cardinal rule of law enforcement that when danger is at hand, policemen go in pairs?
Generally, yes.
Generally.
Yes, sir.
When you talked with Officer Risky, how many able-bodied police officers were on the scene already, if you know?
No, I don't know exactly.
What is a crime log, Sergeant?
It's a chronological report of people who show up at the scene.
And who keeps crime logs in homicide cases such as this one?
Who kept that log? Is that what you're asking
Yes.
me?
Who kept this one?
Officer Chris Cummings?
Chris Cummings. All right, he arrived according to, I guess, his own crime log about midnight, correct?
I don't know.
Have you ever looked at the crime log other than when Ms. Clark showed it to you this morning?
I looked at it about 3 days ago, yes.
In connection with what?
At
Preparing
the time I arrived and the time I left.
All right, and was that in preparation for your testimony here today?
Yes, it was.
Well, when you looked at it, did you examine to see what time others arrived so you could put things in perspective?
I've glanced over it.
And who assigned Officer Cummings to be the crime log officer?
I don't know. Possibly Sergeant Kuhn.
That would assume, of course, that Sergeant Kuhn was there before Sergeant Cummings, or that the order was first given when Sergeant Kuhn arrived, whenever that was.
Yes.
Okay. What is the obligation of the crime log officer with respect to keeping these kinds of records?
To sign in and to sign out officers that arrive at the location
When
and
you
leave.
say sign in and sign out, do the officers actually have to log in with their handwriting, or does the officer who is in charge of the log simply note their arrival?
The officer that's in charge of the log notes that.
Okay. So that the fact that you are logged onto the crime scene at a certain time doesn't mean you endorse it, that means that's what that officer thinks,
Yes,
right?
sir. That's right.
But there is a second source of time information with respect to arrival and departure from the scene, is there not?
Generally, it's with communications. Is that what you're talking about?
And field reports,
Sometimes, yes.
incident reports?
Yes.
All right. If there is a conflict between one officer's time log and the individual report filed by an officer who came to the scene, which is the more reliable, if you know?
I don't really know.
All right, well, if we may come back to the moment that Officer Risky told you about the homicide. This was the first call, right?
Yes, sir.
Up until that moment, when you picked up the phone and found him at the other end, you had no idea anybody had been killed,
That's correct.
let alone Nicole Brown Simpson, true?
True.
He told you that he had not yet had a chance to clear the victim's home, true?
True.
But you did not understand that he was speaking to you from the victim's home.
Not at that time, no.
He expressed concern that there might be other victims in the home.
Yes, sir.
He also expressed concern that the perpetrators, one or more, might be in the home.
That's correct.
Is it fair to say that based on the information you already received, the perpetrator, paren S, could be considered armed and dangerous?
Certainly.
Well, did you authorize or direct Risky to clear the house by himself, Sergeant?
No, he had another officer.
You said get another officer?
That's correct.
Well, you didn't mention that on direct. Is that something you overlooked?
I don't believe I was asked.
I believe you were asked what directions you gave Officer Risky, and you told him to clear the house. Do you now say that you told him to get another officer to go with him?
No, he had told me the officer was already there, sir.
Where were the other officers when Risky was in the home calling you, if you know?
He indicated to me that the other officer was in the home with him.
Which one?
Officer Dick Wally.
Wally, all right. McGowan-Wally team then was the second to arrive almost at the same time as Risky.
I believe so.
And do you know, as you sit here today, whether or not Officer Wally went with Risky through the home and found no perpetrators, but did find two young children?
I was told that he did go with him, yes.
Do you know the age of those children?
Not
As of June?
exactly, sir, no.
Do you know if they were in school?
They were school age, yes.
School age?
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you know whether or not any of the telephone equipment in the home had speed dial buttons with Dad written next to them?
No, sir.
No. Did you ever inquire?
No.
If the fear had been expressed that there might be other victims, I take it you thought from the circumstances that somebody might be after the Simpson family or some of its members.
At that point, I wasn't assuming anything like that.
Well, I don't mean assume, let's say concern. Were you concerned?
I think that'd be a legitimate concern, yes.
How many of these homicide cases have you been involved in over your career?
Probably in the neighborhood of 300, 250.
So you've had considerable experience in the order and the importance of things to be accomplished when a homicide occurs, have you not?
Yes, sir.
Is it fair to say that the very first priority is any possible medical treatment that could be afforded any victim who has not died?
That is correct.
There was no indication in this case that that was a realistic possibility, was there?
Objection.
Overruled.
Could you repeat that for me?
Yes, the description that you got as to the two victims out by the gate indicated that they were probably very dead at that point, true?
Yes.
All right. The second concern would be the protection of any other victims who might be at risk because of whatever dynamics had caused the first homicide to occur, true?
Are you saying if there were other victims? That would be my next concern.
Would you not, as a police officer, when you learn that someone, a prominent person, has been killed, worry that some other family member might also be a target?
Yes.
And it would be appropriate, would it not, to try to identify, locate, and warn any such person?
Yes, if that was appropriate, if that was possible.
If it were possible. Now, you knew in this case that O.J. Simpson was a living citizen of Brentwood, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And you hoped, when you learned what had happened to his wife, that he continued to be living, correct?
Certainly.
But there was always the possibility that he, too, was the target of whatever force had done her in. Wasn't that so?
I suppose.
Didn't you prioritize to any degree notice to Mr. Simpson, if you could give it?
I don't understand the question.
Notice to Mr. Simpson means a telephone call or some other communication saying your wife has been murdered,
Yes.
and you better watch out. Did you prioritize that?
At that point, sir, that wasn't one of my concerns, no.
Was it your concern before you left the police station at 1:25 when you completed your phone calls?
Not then, no.
Can you tell us why it was that for the better part of an hour after you learned of a brutal homicide, you were not concerned about notifying the ex-husband?
Because those types of notifications are done by the detectives.
Oh, and until the detective comes on the scene, he stays at risk, is that it?
Well, if that's what you want to say, yes, that's what we do.
Well, it appears that that's what happened and a lot worse, isn't it?
Objection.
Are we arguing here with the witness counsel?
All right, withdraw.
Thank you.
Is it not true that no one made an effort to notify Mr. Simpson until after 5 a.m. when you were on the phone with West Tech?
I don't know, sir. I don't know if the detectives tried to do it earlier or not.
They didn't do it in your presence, did they?
Oh, no.
And you didn't leave the scene till 4:10.
That's correct.
And if anybody had been dispatched to find Mr. Simpson prior to that, you would have known about it, wouldn't you?
Not necessarily. The detectives have taken over the case at that time.
You think they might have slipped away without your knowledge to do that?
I don't know if they was slipped away, but they could have assigned somebody to do it.
Well, sir, they were there until 4:10 themselves, weren't they? Weren't they?
Yes.
All right. Did you ever inquire of them what efforts are being made to notify Mr. Simpson?
No, I didn't.
Now, did you know that you had at hand, before you left the police station, the means to get hold of Mr. Simpson if you chose to do so?
No, I didn't.
Did it ever occur to you that a 70-year-old girl might know her father's telephone number?
Yes.
Or boy?
Yes.
Same. Okay. Did you bother to ask them for it?
No, I did ask the little girl if she knew if her father was in town or out of town.
Yeah, what'd she say?
She said she thought he was in town.
Okay. Did you ask for his phone number so you could reach him?
No,
Why not?
I didn't think of it.
Why did you spend 50 minutes trying to get it out of West Tech after 5 a.m. when she was still a few feet away?
Because I was responding to requests by the detectives.
You mean the detective said, we want to get West Tech to get the phone number, and you didn't tell him I can get it from Sydney right here?
Nope.
Okay.
Well, objection. That calls for speculation. How does he know if she knows the number of the path or date?
Testified he thought you would.
Get it.
Overruled.
Okay. Corrected. This is a 9-year-old girl, making it even more likely she might have that information, correct?
Objection, counsel. Testify.
That's testifying.
Would you say that a 9-year-old girl would know her dad's phone number, in all
Objection. That
probability?
calls for speculation.
Overruled.
I don't know. I didn't ask her, so I don't know if she knew it or
Your
not.
human experience doesn't tell you whether or not it is likely.
Counsel, we know from the jury questionnaires, the vast majority of our jurors have children, or once were children at 9 years old. We
All
can
right?
move on.
Point is made, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Now then, what duty does a watch commander have to walk through the scene of a double homicide once he gets there and is told it's been secure, whatever that means?
So I could accurately report to the detectives when they ask me questions.
Is it your experience that at some point down the road, detectives and technicians will arrive?
Yes.
And the technicians are the people who try to preserve and lift impressions of various sorts that may identify or exclude certain suspects, true?
That's correct.
All right. That would include footprints,
Yes, sir.
which can in some cases be as singular as a fingerprint, true?
Yes.
And it would include fingerprints themselves,
Yes.
and in these days, other chemical traces that might be relevant and helpful, true?
True.
In addition, in this case, Sergeant, you saw that a tremendous amount of blood had been lost by at least one of the victims, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And that it had already been trampled up by a dog, right?
Yes.
Now, what made you assume that the perpetrator or perpetrators had not walked through the soft earth over which you trampled to get to the gate? How did you know that?
Because we checked the path and we didn't see any indication that somebody had walked through there.
You have an inspection that you made as you walked through those plants, is that right?
Yes, we did. As we walked, we shined the flashlight to make sure we weren't stepping in anything that would be of evidential value.
And you're able to tell us that when you walked up that path, there were no footprints ahead of you, is that right?
That's correct.
Did Officer Risky tell you he had walked the same path?
No, he didn't.
You didn't notice his footprints there, is that right?
No, I didn't.
Now, did you notice that the body of Ronald Goldman was lying in the main on soft earth, heavily shaded?
Yes, it appeared to be on soft earth.
Was it apparent to you, soon after your arrival, if not before, that Mr. Goldman had probably put up severe resistance as he was being killed?
I don't know.
Did it occur to you that there might be, in that area of soft earth near the walkway, the footprints of the person who had committed the crime?
I wasn't thinking about that.
Weren't thinking about it?
Nope.
Okay. Well, how many people did you tell not to go into that area for fear of ruining the case?
I didn't have to tell anybody. Nobody went in.
Nobody went in.
Not while I was there.
Why in the world did you need to go on the crime scene to begin with if you're not a detective?
So I could give the responding detectives an accurate account of what was there. They require that from me.
So without waiting for a trained detective to arrive who might know what evidence to preserve, it is your duty to go in and look so you can tell him what he's about to see. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you did that in this case?
Yes, I did.
Now, was it fairly apparent to you that whoever had perpetrated these homicides had departed in some direction?
Yes.
And how many possibilities were there for the departure route on that early morning?
Would you repeat that for me, please?
Yes. Would you tell the court and jury how many possibilities you saw for an exodus by the killer or killers after the homicides were done and before the police arrived?
Objection, exodus?
Do you want to rephrase that?
A way out. You understand?
Well, yes, I do.
Okay. How many ways out were there?
Well, it was outside. The scene of the crime was outside,
Well,
so
they didn't go straight up.
so other than straight up, they could have left in any direction.
Over the roof?
I suppose if they,
Over the fence?
yes.
Didn't it seem likely that they had either gone out the front gate or out the back gate?
It didn't seem likely to me until I went around to the back and saw the footprints.
Up until then, it never occurred to you that footprints might be there. Is that right?
Oh, I thought there may be.
Okay. You said it didn't seem likely they'd gone that way. Why not?
I said it didn't seem likely they went what way?
Out the back.
I didn't say that.
Oh, you didn't say that?
No, I didn't
Pardon
say
me. Wasn't the evidence staring you in the face that somebody had to go out the back?
Well, like I said, it was outside, so
I understand. Didn't you tell us in your testimony that you saw tracks on the sidewalk on Bundy?
on Bundy,
Yes,
dog tracks only.
that's right.
Yes.
So if the killer wasn't a dog, then somebody had to go out the back end, didn't they?
Sir,
Didn't they?
they could have gone any direction.
Without leaving any footprints after being in all that blood, Sergeant?
Well, that's possible, yes.
And how is that possible? Please tell me.
To just leave and cover their tracks somehow.
Leave and cover the
Yeah.
tracks. Would you explain to all of us how that could be accomplished by a
Well,
killer
if-
with bloody feet?
If they didn't get blood on their feet, they wouldn't leave tracks.
Having been at the scene, can you imagine that the perpetrator or perpetrators didn't get blood on their feet? Can you imagine that?
There was a lot of blood there.
No. Can you imagine that these murders were accomplished without getting any blood on the feet of the
I
perpetrator?
think anything is possible.
Anything is possible. So you think they may have been fast enough on their feet to avoid blood while accomplishing the carnage that we've been looking at on screen. Is that right?
I can't accurately testify to that, I'm sorry.
Oh, all right. Well, now, when you got around to the back, it began to occur to you that that may have been the means of escape. True?
Yes.
And that there could be found there, on the hard surface, terracotta, a porous hard surface, evidence of footprints that could be tied to a specific shoe, right?
Are you asking me if I saw footprints?
No. I'm asking you whether it occurred to you that if that were in fact the means of escape, and the killer or killers had run out that way, that there could be somewhere between the position of the bodies and the back gate some footprints that could identify the perpetrator.
Yes.
All right. When did that occur to you?
When I saw the footprints.
And was it after you saw the footprints that you elected to go with risky and walk on the walkway?
No, it was prior to that I made that decision.
Prior to that? Until you actually saw the footprints, you never thought about the possibility that you were obliterating footprint evidence as you walked?
Objection. That assumes facts not in evidence?
Overruled.
Do you understand the question?
I understand the question, yes, sir.
Did it occur to you, by you and Risky, who's got pretty good sized feet, walking up that walkway, you could be obliterating evidence?
Well, we're assuming facts, not evidence. We don't know how big these officers' feet really are.
We saw Risky's feet, Your Honor, for quite a period of time,
No,
coming in and out.
I didn't look.
All right.
All right, we're going to take our recess at this point, Mr. Bailey. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a recess until 3:30. Please remember my admonition to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves for any opinions about the case. Don't allow anybody to communicate with you or conduct any deliberations till the matter has been submitted to you. Sergeant Rossi, you may step down. Please don't discuss your testimony with anybody except for the lawyers. You're ordered to come back at 3:30. All right, we're in recess.